welcome back to the Zodcast. This is going to be episode number 19, and I just want to do a few quick shout outs. One is going to be to Planet X Filmworks, and they just did an upload on the Seaside Slayings, and that's the title of the video on Planet X Filmworks, and that's by Ross, and he's got another guy named Mark who comes from the Zodiac message boards helping him out on that video about the Johnny Ray and Joyce Swindle murders that happened on February 5th, 1964. That's a really good video. They did an awesome job, and Ross is really growing his channel, and he's doing a lot of Zodiac stuff. So I'll put a link to that video in the description for this one. I also want to give a shout out to Tom Horan in his channel, the Stones Unturned podcast, which is really great. He's been doing some stuff on JonBenet Ramsey that we've talked about before, and he's got a whole series on that. He's on number 5 now, episode 5 on JonBenet, and he nails it. He's absolutely got that case nailed down and shut. I mean, that is exactly how I believe that the JonBenet murder played out, is how he describes it in his video, his 5-video series on the JonBenet Ramsey murder. So definitely go check out Tom Horan's channel, the Stones Unturned podcast on YouTube. And also a quick one for shout out obviously to Ned over at Black Box Online Radio. Ned is almost at 1,000 subscribers. So if, I know a lot of my subscribers already subscribe to that channel, obviously. But if you subscribe to this one and do not yet subscribe to Black Box Online Radio, please go over there and subscribe to that channel. He's got great Zodiac stuff, of course, covers all the different suspects, kind of unlike me. You know, I like to stick to one. But Ned covers them all and fairly, and he does a lot of other really interesting stuff, even outside of the Zodiac, serial killers, and just some great philosophy over on that channel. So without any further ado, we'll get right into it. And I've got some different backgrounds going on here. You can see that's a picture of Paul Avery from Bakersfield College, one of my favorites, of course. And then at the bottom right of that, you see a guy, his name is Bruce Vogel, and that was a good friend of Paul Avery's when he was at Bakersfield College. And Bruce Vogel, of course, played the part of the Lord High Executioner when the Bakersfield College did the Mikado in May of 1953. So just interesting how all the guys that Paul Avery was buddies with at Bakersfield College, I'd say 80% of them, maybe 90% of them, all went to all 4 years of high school with Don Cheney, same grade. All of his friends. Bruce Vogel was in every grade of high school with Don Cheney. Peter Sharland, good friend of Paul Avery's, every year of high school with Don Cheney. Of course, Avery went to Burroughs High School, had a little drive into Bakersfield when he went to college there, but all his friends went to Bakersfield High, which, of course, shared a campus with Bakersfield College. The same auditorium, they shared the auditorium between the high school and the junior college, so that's how small world it was. But believe me, all of Avery's friends at Bakersfield Junior College, Don knew them all. He went to all those grades with them, so he might not have been friends with them, but he definitely was aware of them, had classes with them in high school or whatnot, maybe even had classes with them at Bakersfield College, including Avery. So that's why it's just, you cannot just chalk that whole thing up to a coincidence as far as the Avery Cheney connection goes at Bakersfield College in 1953, and of course the Mikado. But anyway, that leads me into what this video is going to mostly be about, and that's more focusing on the role of Arthur Lee Allen. But first I want to talk about real quickly is the question from the last Zodcast was, who is this child? Who is the young boy in his parents' lap? So no one emailed me with the answer, but I definitely want to reveal the answer so you have just a little bit of time to think to yourself who this is before I show the answer. And it's coming up right now. And if you guessed Ralph Spinelli, you are correct, because that was a picture of a young Ralph Spinelli with his parents. I mean, obviously, he definitely had an Italian look to him. And if you guessed Ralph Spinelli, you guessed it right. So moving right along, I want to show this comment, and this is from Black Box Online Radio with non-advanced permission from Ned. And it says, it's from Tyler Grover, and he's being asked who he thinks the Zodiac is. And he says, I don't think it's any of the prime suspects. I think it's somebody off the suspect radar. If I had to pick one, I like Don Cheney. For some reason, everything always comes back to him and Allen. It seems like there's something there. The smell of those two in this whole thing just doesn't go away. You nailed it, Tyler. That's what everybody comes back to in this case after they look at all these horrible suspects. They always come back to Alan, and they can't totally figure out the deal with Alan. So when you enter Don Cheney, you have this case. That's it. I know it. And then here's another one from Boxing Classics by Gary Wilson. It says, how did the words Christmas with two S's and Trigger Mech find their way into the Zodiac letters? Words that Arthur Lee Allen would frequently use. What are the odds? Question mark. I know I say that a lot. What are the odds? But trust me, this isn't me. I don't even like boxing that much. It says, I always figured Allen may not be the Zodiac, but was perhaps involved in some way. Too many coincidences, whether they were circumstantial or not. Well said, Gary Wilson. That's what people always come back to. So here's another one. This is from BB over on the message boards on ZodiacCiphers.com. And that's the greatest Zodiac website. There's just so much information on there. From Richard Grinnell. He's just, man, he's got it all on there. I mean, the New Canaan letters, which I want to get into that again soon on another Zodcast, but everything's on that website. It's awesome. But anyway, BB says, Detective Bauert believed that Cheney was more involved in the case than he let on. Don basically said, I put my prints on things related to the Zodiac case. Also, I licked the stamps in the envelopes, got rid of the boots and some other stuff. Stuff like maybe guns, knives, or even bombs is what he probably meant. And this is why, after Allen died, Don should have become the number one suspect and not Allen. It was Cheney with the motive, means, and opportunity, and not ALA. Of course, that's Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was on parole. He was being watched. He was not the Zodiac. Well said, BB, and that's not me either. That was even before my book came out, but those are the from the message boards of ZodiacCiphers.com. So obviously you see where this is going. Everything always goes back to Arthur Lee Allen and now Don Cheney. And then you look at these things like the Exorcist letter and these bizarre symbols at the bottom of it, and how they can be arranged to make the name Lee. I think Tom Voight may have done that or found that originally when he used to like Arthur Lee Allen as a suspect. I think Peter Ackerman gives him credit for it, but you see here how if you rearrange those letters, it can make the name Lee, Leigh, which is how Arthur Lee Allen spelled his middle name, and that's the name he went by. He went by Lee, and a lot of times he also went by Big Al for Allen, but mostly he went by Lee, Leigh. And to this day, Arthur Lee Allen is still the prime suspect, no matter his, with his DNA coming back negative against what they had from one of the San Francisco Chronicle letters, which later determined that DNA came from outside of the stamp. It could have been from anybody. So Allen's still in play as far as DNA, as well as Don Cheney for that matter. But anyway, it's just the case of you keep reading this, you look at the online surveys, and Allen is still the number one suspect. Why? Because the evidence for him is so strong. Even though there's a lot of things that point against Allen, there are a lot of strong things point against him. Well, when you enter Don Cheney, which I've always said, you make up for all the things that Allen lacks. So between the two of them, you have these murders complete. And it's lately I've had a moment of zen where I'm 100% convinced now. I'm not 92 where I was maybe a couple months ago or even when I wrote my book, but I'm 100% convinced these two guys were the letter writers, the cipher writers, and the assailants in the Zodiac crimes. I think that Don Cheney was the mastermind. He was far smarter than Arthur Lee Allen. I think Arthur Lee Allen was probably above average IQ, but I think Don Cheney was probably approaching genius. I think he was just that smart. And how do I know this? Well, we know he was a mechanical engineer. He went to Cal Poly in Pomona, where he met his wife. I can tell you Don Cheney made the honor roll every year. He was at Bakersfield High School. And obviously he had an arts degree from Bakersfield College. At the same time, Paul Avery was there. Of course, Paul Avery left before Don graduated from Bakersfield College, but they were there at the same time. But just despite all the circumstantial evidence that you get when you put these two guys together, it's astounding when you put it back. So that's what we're going to discuss here in depth. And I'm going to show this graph up on it. We're going to look at all the possibilities here that these two guys, what was going on with those two individuals and how they come into the whole Zodiac crimes. Well, look at number one. These are all the things that you have to consider with these two. One, it was Cheney and Allen messing with the cops. So let's look at that in a little better detail. If they were messing with the cops, both of them together, you have to realize here's Don Cheney. He's got a young family at the time. He's got two young children. He's pretty newly married. He was married in 1962, and of course, Zodiac crime started in late 1968. But Don's got a lot to lose. You know, he's trained to be a mechanical engineer, trying to provide for his young family. He has in-laws. He's got relatives. His parents are still alive at this point. He's going to risk it all just so they can jerk the cops around. Him and Arthur Lee Allen together came up with this great idea of, hey, we heard about this killing on Lake Herman Road, and let's just jerk the cops around and pretend that we were the guy that did it and come up with this thing and call him the Zodiac or whatever. Just ponder that for a while. That's absurd. It's truly absurd. It's as crazy as the Zodiac crimes in of itself. And so are all these options. It's worth just pondering each one. Cheney and Allen messing with the cops. That's a felony in of itself. I mean, let's face it, those guys could have both gone to jail for a very long time. And of course, maybe Cheney was just doing this on his own and wanting to mess with the cops and having Allen as the patsy. And we'll talk about that more. But look at the risk that they're taking on there. Just to jerk the cops around and try to take credit for these other murders they had nothing to do with. So it's a bad choice, but it is one that's out there with these two gentlemen. Okay, number two. Cheney accuses Allen for revenge. Now, that goes back to the whole deal with Cheney's daughter and the molestation attempt by Arthur Lee Allen that's talked about a lot in this case. And according to Cheney, that event happened in 1967 where Arthur Lee Allen touched his daughter's bottom out on a boating trip, and she said, Uncle Lee touched my bottom to Don Cheney. So then he was aware that Arthur Lee Allen was trying to molest his daughter. Now, keep in mind, Cheney's daughter was born in late 1963, so she would have only been like 3.5, maybe even 4 at the most years old in 1967. And Arthur Lee Allen really didn't have any record of going after anyone that young. For, number one. Number two, Cheney never reported this incident to the police. Never. There's no record of it whatsoever. 3, by Cheney's own admission, he stayed friends with Arthur Lee Allen from 6 months up to a year and a half after the alleged incident. See, that's John Cheney just trying to make his timeline work again. And also, Cheney's daughter denied this ever happened as an adult. Sure, of course, she was young and wouldn't have remembered, but her mother would have probably told her at some point, because it wasn't like this really bad full-on molestation. He touched her bottom, which I know that's extremely horrific, but I don't think her mother would have hid it from her. So maybe it did happen, but there's a lot of things that point away that it did. It looks like Cheney did tell Arthur Lee Allen's brother Ron and his sister-in-law Karen Allen that this alleged thing happened. And it's my theory that he did it because he was always setting this up from the beginning as a master work, a master crime, to come up with the whole Zodiac persona, and eventually shove off a lot of the blame or the attention onto Arthur Lee Allen. So look at that too. Just look at this. He's going to accuse his friend of being the Zodiac Killer because he's mad about something. And remember, Don comes forward with Allen in July of 1971. That's a long time after 1967. I mean, if it happened at the end of 67, you're talking about all of 68, 69, all of 70, and half of 71. At least 3.5 years later, he's going to start his revenge tour on Allen. I mean, don't you think he would have calmed down a little bit in 3.5 years? That's why his story never adds up, because this is a master plan by Don Cheney. He managed to manipulate everyone. So it just doesn't shake. It doesn't. Think about it. He's going to accuse his friend for this revenge, even if it's not the molestation attempt. Think about it. Why would he be so mad at the guy? Why wouldn't he do something else? He's going to risk going to prison for messing up an official police investigation by claiming his friend was the Zodiac? That's insanity. It's crazier than the murders themselves to accuse your friend of being a serial killer, full knowing that it wasn't him. So also consider how convenient would it have been for Don Cheney that he's going to get revenge on Allen, knowing Allen wasn't the Zodiac, if that's the case, and that Allen owned a Zodiac model wristwatch that, remember, has the name and the cross circle logo, and those are very rare come together. The symbol with the name Zodiac spelled out, very rare do those come together. And they do on a wristwatch called Zodiac that Arthur Lee Allen got for Christmas in 1967. Not 68, but 67. But either way, the killer doesn't come forward until the end of July 1969, calling himself the Zodiac in the debut of Zodiac letters, the 3 different letters sent to 3 different newspapers with a 3-part cipher. So how convenient is that? You're gonna accuse the guy of being the Zodiac, and he just happened to have a Zodiac watch. That's crazy. Just think about it, the risk involved. And also, here's what Cheney's risking about accusing Alan of this: that the real Zodiac finds out about it. Now, we know Ralph Spinelli found out about it at some point and came up with this story about Arthur Lee Allen coming to his business and saying, I'm the Zodiac. I'm going to go do a hit for you. And then he leaves, and then the Paul Stein murder happens, and he comes back and says, do you believe me now? This whole story that Spinelli tells in the video, his name was Arthur Lee Allen. But think about it. If Cheney's not the Zodiac and Allen's not the Zodiac, and Cheney's just accusing Allen, the real Zodiac could find out about it and say, God, this guy's going to attribute all my masterwork to this child molester, this jobless child molester that just this deranged guy named Arthur Lee Allen that no one really likes other than Don Cheney. And of course, he had a couple other friends, of course, Phil Tucker. But think about it. That whole scenario is a joke that Cheney's accusing him for revenge. It's too much risk for Don Cheney with a young family, with some standing in society, even though he was a job hopper, which is another thing that points to him, in my opinion, as being the Zodiac, because he just couldn't concentrate on doing this masterwork, killing these people, not getting caught, and holding down a regular job. As smart as Don Cheney is, you could be the smartest person in the world, but you still have logistics, you still have time. It took a lot of time to write those ciphers. It took a lot of time to write the letters. So number 2 for me is out the window. So let's move on to number 3. Cheney is telling the truth about Allen being the Zodiac. Well, everybody in the Zodiac circle doesn't really believe it. I mean, when Cheney first came out with this story about Allen, it was heavily believed by the police. Of course, I said he came forward with Allen through his friend Sandy Panzarella in July of 1971. Panzarella had a lot of credibility. He started a company called Science Dynamics. It was computerized billing for medical companies that started in the early 70s. Can you imagine that? Wow, that guy was extremely smart. Panzarella was an electrical engineer and started that company and made tens of millions of dollars. So pretty smart of Cheney to use his friend as the front man to eventually get a hold of the San Francisco PD for Don to come tell his story about Arthur Lee Allen relaying to him on New Year's Day, 1969. And remember, he moved that from New Year's Day, 1968, because it fit him better. And of course, it never totally made sense that Arthur Lee Allen would have been the lone Zodiac Killer and would have shared all that to his friend Don Cheney, because we know the Zodiac Killer did not want to get caught easily. He just did too much concealment, hiding his handwriting. It's obvious that the handwriting is disguised. Why would you just tell your friend, hey, I'm going to go out and do all these murders, show him where the murders were going to happen, and then call himself the Zodiac and just have all that faith in Don Cheney? Because that's the number one reason that Don was just not believable when he came forward with Allen. Because why would Arthur Lee Allen share that with him? It makes zero sense. It doesn't. And of course, Cheney's story changed a million times. He kept adding to it. As things went on, he said his memory got better. So no one really believes that. They don't believe that Don Cheney, they don't believe his story. They don't. I mean, in the beginning, everyone did. Everyone did, because Arthur Lee Allen was this creepy guy. He was a child molester. It was perfect. He came straight out of Central Casting. It was ideal for Don Cheney. Allen was such a strong suspect that his handwriting was already being looked at, I think, just 2 weeks after Cheney brought him forward as a suspect. So it got everyone's attention when they started looking at Allen. I mean, it was a perfect person to blame. I mean, he was, and considering the fact that Allen had already been questioned as a Zodiac suspect in September of 1969 by Detective John Lynch, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But it doesn't make sense. Obviously, Don is not telling the truth about Allen. The more sense that it makes was that Cheney was the Zodiac with some lower level involvement of Arthur Lee Allen, and it's just the only way that thing could make sense at all. No one really believes Don's whole story that Allen was the lone Zodiac Killer. It just doesn't add up, and it didn't stand the test of time, but it sure did work early on in this case. So now we're going to explore two of the last possibilities with the whole Cheney-Allen connection. And number 4, Don Cheney is the Zodiac Killer with Allen being a patsy. Now, I'm definitely going to come down that is most likely what is going on here, because Cheney, I can tell you, is smarter than Arthur Lee Allen. He would have been the mastermind for all this. why are these two guys hanging out together? I mean, obviously, Alan is a creepy guy. He was unemployed at the time. Anything probably would have sounded interesting to Alan if they sat around just kicking around ideas. And that part could have been true by Don Cheney saying, oh, we were talking about, a scenario for writing a book or something like that, how this people would go kill people on lovers' lanes and stuff like that. And, I think Cheney tries to surmise that Alan took it to another level or something like that. But it's probably the opposite. Don is clearly better and more capable of being the actual attacker, in my opinion. Number one, Don Cheney was an avid big game hunter, and that's just a fact. He was his own son considered him a mountain man. Don Cheney was a highly adept with knives, sharpening knives, killing wild game in the forest, going on multi-day camping trips out deep into the forest, cooking the food, living off the land. Alan was not. He was more of a city type. Even Don would say that about Arthur Allen. He made a terrible hunting partner. So there's definitely something more to that with Alan being a patsy, Alan being the one that's going to take the blame for this, either willingly or unwillingly, or a combination somewhere in there. With Alan maybe agreeing to take some of the blame for this, to be looked at as a Zodiac killer, because it was definitely a step up from being just a terrible child molester. So maybe that sounded good, Alan, to Alan. And in the beginning, Alan seemed to like the attention, but he soon turned against it. It was too much. So that's definitely a possibility. Now, number 5, Alan and Cheney conspired together to commit the Zodiac attacks. That could, the truth is going to be, and in my opinion, my 100% opinion, the truth of the Zodiac killings are in a combination of number 4 and number 5. I think Alan was a patsy to the extent that he was going to take most of the blame. Now, we talk about, obviously there's 4 canonical Zodiac crimes, the first being Lake Herman Road, which was December 20th, 1968. Now, if you look, I know Richard Grinnell of ZodiacCyphers.com has a video, I think he calls it the 9-to-1 ratio or something like that, about all the shell casings at the Lake Herman Road attack, where it looks like there may have been a second shooter at Lake Herman Road, because that last shell casing was never recovered. It could have been in David Faraday's Rambler and got stuck in the car somewhere, but they never recovered the last shell casing from the Lake Herman Road shooting. It could have been Alan and Cheney together on that, and Alan took Arthur Young took a smaller part in it, maybe executed Betty Lou Jensen as she ran away or something, just enough where he was complicit in that crime, where Don Cheney could now blackmail him into doing whatever he wanted. I mean, that's just a possibility. I don't know that. Obviously, those 2 victims died. Either one of them, they died pretty much instantly, or they did die instantly. There was no descriptions given like the next 2 canonical Zodiac crimes. So that's just, part of it, what could have happened there. Could have been Alan and Cheney riding shotgun Lake Herman Road, and Alan just getting his hands wet enough for Don to be able to blackmail him. And could have played out like that. Alan might have had no earthly idea that Don Cheney was going to come back to the Bay Area and commit Blue Rock Springs, which happened in July of 1969. So remember, there's this long gap in between Lake Herman Road and December of 1968 till you get to July 1969 for the Blue Rock Springs attack on Mike Migeot and Darlene Ferrin. So why was there such a long delay? And remember, Don Cheney left the Bay Area soon after that New Year's Day of 1969. So no, he was not living in the Bay Area for 3 of the canonical Zodiac crimes, but he was living in Concord in the Bay Area, just outside of Mount Diablo, by the way, before he moved. And we don't know exactly when Don Cheney moved out of the Bay Area. One account, I think he claims he moved that day after he talked to Arthur Lee Allen, and Allen told him how he wanted to be the Zodiac Killer. He moved actually later that day when he got home, and then I saw other accounts where it was maybe a few weeks later. But at some point, yes, Don Cheney did move to outside of Los Angeles in Pomona, where his wife was from. So it'd make perfect sense for Don to come back months later and picking this up again in Blue Rock Springs, because we're looking for a local killer at this point. Someone local to, Vallejo is ground zero. If you take into account, obviously, Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs, and even the attack at Lake Berryessa, they're all close to somebody living in Vallejo had been ground zero. So Alan just fit the bill. And it would have been smart of Don to come up there and do those crimes back in the Bay Area, particularly when he's not living there, because it gets the any kind of risk of him being caught. And if he wants to blame Alan or keep the blame on Alan, he knows Alan was in the Bay Area the whole time. Arthur Lee Allen was living at either 32 Fresno Street in Vallejo or residing at his trailer in Santa Rosa for the whole four canonical Zodiac crimes. So it just makes more sense that the combination going on here is between these two guys. So we'll just quickly go over the simple, Arthur Lee Allen bona fides for being the Zodiac Killer and that circumstantial evidence against him. Of course, there's a ton of it. This is just four I'm going to do here on Alan as the highlights, because I know most people listening to this know this, and if anyone's new to this channel, I'm sure you have probably hardly any idea what I'm talking about, so you'll have to go back to the first video I did. I'll try to do a summary at some point, but it's kind of hard because this is always evolving. But number one, had many police investigators convinced he was the Zodiac Killer. That's absolutely true. The police that were involved were convinced Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer, including Detective George Bowert, who had the case last. He thought that Cheney was telling the truth, although he did agree that Cheney knew more than he was letting on. But Bowert had tunnel vision, and he thought that Arthur Lee Allen was indeed the Zodiac Killer. Of course, number two, had a Zodiac wristwatch as of December 67. Of course, Christmas 67, he got that watch as a gift from his mother, and his younger brother Ron got an identical Zodiac Seawolf model wristwatch. So how convenient that this killer comes on the scene calling himself Zodiac and using that cross circle logo, which only come together really in that wristwatch. It's just true. The watch should never be written off as a small bit of circumstantial evidence on Allen. It's extremely big, and there's a reason why Graysmith would lean on that, and he should. He didn't get everything wrong. He didn't. He got a lot of things wrong, but he was right about the watch. Number three, known to intentionally misspell words like Zodiac. That is an absolute fact that anyone knew Arthur Lee Allen, that he would spell things like eggs, A-I-G-S, on his grocery list that the police found. His sister-in-law backed that up, and his brother. Everyone that knew Arthur Lee Allen knew he misspelled words for comedic effect. So isn't it odd that when the Zodiac Killer comes out, he's doing the same thing? The Zodiac wasn't a bad speller because he would spell a lot of the words that he did misspell in the letters correctly in other letters. So it's obvious the Zodiac could spell. He was, in my opinion, that's Cheney trying to keep the shade on Arthur Lee Allen with either Arthur Lee Allen's permission or not. I mean, I think that it's somewhere in there. I think it's more likely that maybe Allen even agreed to it because he had to trust Cheney that wasn't going to totally throw him under the bus and get him convicted, because it would not have taken much to get Arthur Lee Allen convicted. One small item, a gun, a piece of Paul Stein's shirt found in his trailer or his house, would have been enough to get him convicted, because he was already a child molester, bad standing in the community. When he was interviewed by the police, he was always combative, and he tried to lead the police on, such as when he was questioned early in 1969 by Detective John Lynch, and he said that he was going to go to Lake Berryessa that day, but he went somewhere else instead. See, he's already toying with the police. He knows they're coming. So I think there was some form of agreement or blackmail going on between Cheney and Allen seemed to know they're coming. I think Allen somewhat reluctantly agreed to be part of this and take some of the blame, and just had to trust that Don Cheney wasn't going to let him go to prison for this. And obviously that was number four, where Allen was questioned by Detective John Lynch on October 6, 1969. And just a small bit of Zodiac trivia, of course, the actor John Carroll Lynch played Arthur Lee Allen in David Fincher's film Zodiac. So just one of those little small things. So now the fun part that I love the most, of course, is the Don Cheney bona fides. Remember, you get all of this package when you get these two guys as a unit, which just makes it so astounding. I mean, people talk about having to circle back to Arthur Lee Allen as a suspect, but when you add Cheney in this mix, you have the super suspect that you could add all the other Zodiac suspects together and multiply it by 10, and you cannot come up with the circumstantial evidence that exists between these two guys being somewhat of a tandem. Either Allen is a patsy, somewhat willing participant at a lower level. You get it all. So with Don, here's what we have. Brought forward the prime suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, in July of 71. Now, of course, that's here's a guy that created this masterwork, inserting himself into the case. No one else really did that other than Arthur Lee Allen at a smaller level, by saying, he wished he could help. The part that Robert Graysmith talks about in his Name Was Arthur Lee Allen video, how the person that committed the crime will often offer assistance to the police. Well, Don did that in a huge way. He gave them the gift. He came forward and said, I got your man. This is my buddy did it. He told me in 69 that he was going to be the Zodiac Killer, and he showed me where he was going to do these killings. So what a gift. Why did you wait so long, Don? Why did you wait till July 69 to come forward about a killer who last killed Paul Stine in October of 1969, and he's going to wait till July of 71? It just doesn't add up, does it? So that's his number one, bona fide to me. Brought forward, prime suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, July 1971. Number two, match Zodiac witness descriptions, body type, and hair color. Of course, hair color comes from Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard from Lake Berryessa, where they could see the Zodiac's hair coming through the eyelets of the mask. They both said that they saw that hair separately when they were questioned before Cecilia succumbed to her wounds 2 days later. And they both described seeing the hair through the clip-on glasses coming down, and it was brown. Both of them described the hair as brown. And obviously, you have all the Zodiac witnesses, including the Robbins kids from the Paul Stine attack, who saw the Paul Stine murder from across the street, and a man wiping it down, to Donald Falk, Officer Donald Falk from the Presidio at the Paul Stine attack, said that the man he saw was barrel-chested. We know Don Cheney was barrel-chested. There's no doubt about it. I have a picture of him from 1965. He was barrel-chested. And I just, use Alex Jones as an example, the talk show host Alex Jones. He's what I call barrel-chested. But they all said he was stocky. Mike Mageau said stocky, even though he had a flashlight in his face. Robin's kids, stocky. Everyone described stocky. Cecilia Shepard used the word, I think, fat, to Detective Dave Collins, and he had it. Of course, I think the best height assessment was given by Cecilia Shepard when Deputy Dave Collins stood in front of her and said, I'm 5'10". How tall do you think the attacker was? And she said, about 2 inches taller than you. So that puts him right at 6 feet. And we know Don Cheney was, due to our friend, know that he was right at 6 feet. So continuing on, number three, I already talked about this, that Don Cheney was an avid big game hunter. That is a fact that I can prove. Number four, as you can see in the background of this picture, Don Cheney was in the Air Force for 2 years, where he had heavy electronics training and celestial navigation training, among other things, when he was training to be a pilot in the Air Force in Harlingen, Texas, and that was in 1957. Number five, Don Cheney was a proficient sewer. He loved to make leather sheaths for knives. That's true, and I can prove it. And why is that important? Because of the costume that Brian Hartnell described that the Zodiac was wearing at Lake Berryessa, how the Zodiac cross circle logo was done with care, Brian said. It looked sewn to him. It was symmetrical. This wasn't something scrawled on with paint. According to Brian Hartnell, it was done with care. So Don knew how to sew, and I think his sister probably taught him how, because she made all the costumes for plays for Bakersfield High School productions. Of course, number six, another personal favorite, the Bakersfield Junior College connection with Paul Avery and the Mikado. We already talked about that. Number seven, of course, Don Cheney was a mechanical engineer and a draftsman. That is a fact. The Zodiac knew mathematics, radians. It's like Mike Cole said in his new book about radians. He said, even if somebody took that in high school at calculus, they're not going to remember it 10, 15, 20 years later and really know how to apply it. That's just true. Michael Cole said that well, and he's a engineer at Intel, so I'm going to kind of go with him on that as well. It's also like Gareth Penn, who's a Zodiac suspect, said. He said only 1 out of 100 people would have even known what a radian was during the Zodiac crimes, or probably even now. Even if you did have it in high school, which not everybody did, but I didn't, but even people that did, they're not going to remember how to apply a radian. You learned it for a test in your senior year and never thought about it again. And Michael Cole said that so well, but I agree with Michael Cole on that, and Gareth Penn. 1 out of 100 is probably a good estimate. Guess what? A mechanical engineer is going to know what a radian was. Talking about circumference of a circle, because Don was specifically a pipe stress analyst. So pipes are round, would have known what a radian was. Number 8, it's my favorite, latest great finding. Don Cheney's grandfather's first cousin was Mary Martha Paradise. I can't get over that. That's huge. That is just a big discovery. You know, I'm 100%. I'm all in. When you see the Zodiac Killer use the word slaves in paradise, and he spells it Paradice, that comes from Don Cheney's grandfather's first cousin, Mary Martha Paradise, who had a big estate, had a lot of money, was married to a well-known architect. That is where it comes from in the letters. I'm sorry, just the astronomical odds. People are into math or ciphers. Just calculate the odds that Don Cheney's that closely related to someone with a last name that rare that you don't see anywhere. In fact, most paradises with that spelling in America come from like the Colorado area, which is where the husband of his first cousin twice removed comes from. That's how few people with that name are in the United States even to this day. And it just so happens that Don's related to one. That's not a coincidence. That's where he got the name from. I'm all in. Sorry. That's a big discovery. Go take every top suspect in the Zodiac case. Look at their genealogy. Go out 10 levels. Go out, fan out 10 degrees in each direction. Mother's line, father's line. You're not going to find someone with that last name. That's stunning circumstantial evidence, in my opinion. You can't beat it. So that's just for starters with Don. Of course, I have a lot more. They're all in my book. I could probably multiply what you see on the screen by about 4. Then of course you see a copy of the Zodiac's bus bomb diagram. Is this something that a dishwasher, Ross Sullivan, would do, or Guykowski, the newspaper guy? I mean, look at that. Look at that drawing. That drawing actually makes total sense. I mean, he's got the bus at an angle, like, and a flow chart with the arrows, voltages he's talking about here. This person knows what they're doing. This isn't a newspaper guy. This isn't a dishwasher. This isn't a real estate guy, Larry Cade. This is a mechanical engineer. Look at it. This is not something that somebody secretly did in the middle of their basement with not one person knowing them know they had the ability to do this kind of stuff. This isn't just somebody done on a napkin. That was actually, you can tell it's mechanical. It's a mechanical engineer that did that. It's so obvious. And now you get into things like, obviously this is a picture of Norm Boudreau. This was Arthur Lee Allen's friend. And just to kind of go back a little bit to Arthur Lee Allen, and why he would not, the biggest reason that he wouldn't be a lone Zodiac and why Don was always lying is because Arthur Lee Allen was left-handed. It's like Norm Boudreau says in the video, his name was Arthur Lee Allen. He was not only left-handed literally, he was left-handed figuratively. Like everything he tried to do right turned out to be wrong. He said he reminded him of the character in Catcher in the Rye. He said Norm Boudreau claimed that his wife liked Arthur Lee Allen. He liked Arthur Lee Allen. I think he said his kids liked Arthur Lee Allen. He just lived in a kid's world. He kind of reminds me of Michael Jackson, where he liked to hang out with these little kids. Of course, he was interested in him in that way as well. Like Norm Boudreau said, he goes, I knew he liked it, kids, but I didn't appreciate how much, meaning, the molestation part he was not aware of. And it's also interesting that Norm Boudreau says that he met Don Cheney on at least 2 or 3 occasions, and there was something about him that didn't sit well with him. He didn't trash Don Cheney because there was just something about him that didn't sit well with him. So that's a really interesting insight that he picked up on that. And also that his name was Arthur Lee Allen is supposed to be about Arthur Lee Allen, that documentary, and it winds up being more about suspicions on Don Cheney. Wonder why. And also wanted to mention again, there's a shot of the video from Richard Grinnell that talks about Zodiac Killer and the 9-to-1 ratio at Lake Herman Road. Definitely go check that out. It's on Richard Grinnell's channel. And just type that title in and you'll find it. But that's very interesting about the extra shell casing at Lake Herman Road. It could be what happened. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened. There was Allen and Cheney both at Lake Herman Road, but it could be. Pure speculation on my part, but there is a shell casing not accounted for. Could be. That could be how he got Allen's feet wet, and Allen was stuck at that point. We know Allen passed a polygraph when he was at Atascadero with flying colors, supposedly, but that polygraph was later called into question by the state's polygraph examiner years later. He looked at it and said he didn't really feel totally confident that test was either done right or something like that. I know we talked about that on a previous episode. So I noticed that on Tom Voigt's channel, he put up a new video called Nobody Called Him Arthur. And of course, that title got my attention immediately because that comes from Don Cheney's mouth. Nobody called him Arthur, talking about Arthur Lee Allen. And they're talking about a traffic ticket that Arthur Lee Allen got on March 13th, 1971, and that was the same date that the Zodiac mailed what was called the LA letter, the Los Angeles letter, because it was sent to the LA Times. So that video is really interesting because it talks about how Arthur Lee Allen got a ticket. I think it was for speeding. I'm not really sure, but in downtown San Francisco, in the city, and that the Zodiac had mailed, I can't remember how many correspondences in a row from the city of San Francisco. And the first one that wasn't was the Los Angeles letter that was mailed on March 13th, 1971, that came from Pleasanton, California, that was about 30 to 40 minutes away from San Francisco. So why did the Zodiac break his pattern of mailing things from San Francisco? Could Allen have been mailing those letters, and after he got the traffic ticket in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco, decided to change things up and mail it from Pleasanton? Could be. Very interesting, because I've always wondered if this tandem is going on between Allen and Cheney. It would have been very convenient with Cheney being down in Pomona, even if he came up to do the murders, that having somebody there to mail all those correspondences from San Francisco would definitely keep the heat off of him and would have been really convenient. So was Allen doing that for Cheney? Did they share in some of the letter writing? Could be. Some of the drawings, like I talked about in the last episode with the G glyph. So great video. I actually gave it a like. That was pretty interesting. So it's good upload. Check it out. So of course, there's a copy of my book, Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer. Of course, it's on Amazon.com. So, this is where things are going. Why does everyone always come back to Arthur Lee Allen and now Don Cheney? Like those things say, you just can't get away from them. There's just too much going on to ignore these guys. An old picture of Allen. Like I said, he's got some giant shark fin or something coming out of his trunk there, and crack kills Allen. And there's, of course, a picture of Don Cheney with his brown hair. Guess what? Of course, that one's from the mid-'70s, but it'd be interesting to see one from Don in 1969 to see if his hair was that long, because it would mean a lot at Lake Berryessa. And then, of course, he would have gotten it cut before the attack at the Presidio on Paul Stein. Here's another one. Something about Donald Cheney. Trust me, I did not write that. Somebody else did. It's all over. Is it possible? Of course, I put is it possible Don Cheney is the Zodiac? Yes. Unsolved Mysteries on Reddit. Of course, that is not me either. It's somebody else. It's just, here we go again. We're coming back around to the truth of who did these crimes. There's another one. Of course, the handwriting's similar. And that's it for now. Stay tuned for the next.